Nadia stood in the kitchen of her pristine suburban home, staring at the divorce papers she'd hidden beneath a stack of recipe cards. When her husband walked in and said the words that would shatter everything, "You know what you are? You're just a prep wife. Keeping everything nice and ready until the real thing comes along." She'd spent 15 years building their life. 15 years waking up at 5:30 to make his favorite breakfast. 15 years managing their home, raising their 2 daughters, supporting his career while her own dreams collected dust in the back of her closet. And now, standing there in the same kitchen where she'd celebrated birthdays and anniversaries and ordinary Tuesdays, he'd reduced her to a placeholder. "Mom said I won't be able to grow my channel to 1,000 subscribers. Let's prove her wrong." The morning had started like any other Wednesday. Nadia had already prepared lunch boxes for 12-year-old Amber and 9-year-old Joy, ironed Derek's shirts for the week, and was seasoning chicken for dinner when her phone buzzed. It was her sister, Maya. "Girl, I need to tell you something." Maya's voice came through tight and urgent. "I saw Derek yesterday. At the Pearl downtown." Nadia switched the phone to speaker, continuing her prep work. "That fancy restaurant. He told me he had a late meeting." The silence on the other end lasted too long. "Maya? He wasn't alone, Nadia. He was with a woman. Young. They were close. Real close." Nadia's hands stopped moving. The knife she'd been using hung suspended over the cutting board. "What do you mean close?" "Holding hands across the table close. Looking at her like he used to look at you." The chicken could wait. Nadia dried her hands slowly, deliberately, buying time for her racing thoughts to catch up with her pounding heart. 15 years of marriage. And she'd never suspected, never questioned the late meetings, the weekend conferences, the new cologne he'd started wearing 6 months ago. "Did he see you?" Nadia asked. "No. I made sure of that." "Nadia, I'm so sorry." After she hung up, Nadia stood in her kitchen and looked around. Everything was perfect, just the way Derek liked it. The granite countertops gleamed. Fresh flowers sat in a crystal vase on the dining table. The hardwood floors reflected the afternoon sun streaming through windows she'd cleaned that morning. This house was her masterpiece, her full-time job, her entire identity. And none of it mattered. She pulled out her laptop and started searching. Not for evidence of his affair yet. That would come. First, she needed to understand what she was dealing with. She typed, "Signs your husband is cheating." The articles that appeared felt like they'd been written specifically about her life. The late nights. The sudden interest in his appearance. The way he'd become distant. Like she was furniture he'd stopped noticing. Then she searched something else. Best divorce lawyers in Atlanta. When Derek came home that evening, Nadia had dinner on the table, a smile on her face, and murder in her heart. Not literal murder, of course, but the death of the woman she'd been. The woman who believed that if she just tried hard enough, loved deeply enough, sacrificed completely enough, she'd be irreplaceable. "Smells good," Derek said, loosening his tie. He was 42, handsome in that aging well way that men got to enjoy while women fought against every wrinkle. His beard was freshly trimmed. When had he started caring so much about his appearance? "How was your day?" Nadia asked, serving him perfectly seasoned salmon with roasted vegetables. "Long. Exhausting. These clients are demanding as hell." He scrolled through his phone while he ate, barely looking at her. Nadia watched him and wondered when she'd become invisible. She'd been 23 when they married, fresh out of college with a degree in architecture and dreams of designing buildings that would change city skylines. Derek had been 28, ambitious, working his way up at a marketing firm. They'd been in love, or at least she thought they had been. "I was thinking," Derek said suddenly, still looking at his phone, "maybe you should get a job." Nadia's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "A job? Yeah. The girls are older now. You've got time. Plus, it might be good for you to get out of the house." She could hear what he wasn't saying. "You're boring. You've become boring." "I'll think about it," she said carefully. That night, after Derek fell asleep, Nadia did what she'd never done before. She went through his phone. She knew his password because he'd never changed it, never thought he needed to. Why would he? She was just Nadia, predictable, trusting Nadia who made his life comfortable. The messages were all there. Conversations with Jennifer, work that had nothing to do with work, plans for lunch dates, complaints about his wife, his life, his responsibilities. And then, the message that made Nadia's blood run cold. Can't wait until I'm free. You're the future I deserve, not the past I'm stuck with. Jennifer had responded. Soon, baby. Soon you'll be all mine. Nadia took screenshots of everything. Every message. Every photo. Every plan they'd made behind her back. Then she put his phone back exactly where he'd left it and went to the bathroom, where she locked the door and finally let herself feel it all. The rage came first, hot and consuming. She wanted to storm into the bedroom and throw his phone at his head. Wanted to scream until the neighbors called the police. Wanted to set fire to every shirt she'd ever ironed. Every meal she'd ever cooked. Every part of herself she'd given away. But then came something else. Something colder, sharper, more dangerous. Clarity. She'd spent 15 years building a life around a man who saw her as temporary. 15 years investing in someone else's dreams while her own withered. And now she had a choice. She could fall apart, could beg him to stay, could try to compete with this Jennifer woman who was probably younger, probably more exciting, probably everything Nadia used to be before marriage and motherhood. Or she could burn it all down and build something new from the ashes. The next morning, Nadia called the number she'd found in her search, Mitchell and Associates, divorce attorneys. The woman who answered sounded kind but professional. I need a consultation, Nadia said. Today, if possible. May I ask what this concerns? My husband is having an affair, and I want to make sure I'm protected before I confront him. The appointment was set for 2 o'clock. Nadia had 3 hours to get her daughters to school, maintain her perfect household routine, and pretend everything was normal. She made Derek his favorite breakfast, kissed him goodbye like she did every morning, smiled as he walked out the door to go meet his future, while she planned his reckoning. The law office was downtown, sleek and modern with glass walls and expensive art. Sarah Mitchell was a black woman in her 50s with silver locks and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Tell me everything, Sarah said. Nadia did. She showed the screenshots, explained their financial situation, detailed 15 years of marriage. Sarah listened without interrupting, taking notes on an iPad. When Nadia finished, Sarah leaned back in her chair. Here's what we're looking at. You've been out of the workforce for 15 years. You supported your husband while he built his career. In Georgia, that matters. You're entitled to alimony, potentially for several years. You also have 2 minor children, which means child support. He makes good money, Nadia said. Very good money. I handle the household accounts, but I know what comes in. Do you have access to bank statements, investment accounts, tax returns, everything? I file all our documents. Sarah smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a woman who'd helped countless other women through this exact situation. Then we're going to make sure you get what you deserve. But first, I need you to do something. Don't confront him yet. Gather everything. Every document, every asset, every account. Copy it all. Then we'll talk about timing. Nadia left the office feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Powerful. Over the next 2 weeks, Nadia became a different person. On the surface, she was still the perfect wife. Meals appeared on time. The house stayed immaculate. She smiled and nodded and played her role. But underneath, she was cataloging everything. She found Derek's investment portfolio, hidden accounts he'd never mentioned. She discovered he'd been transferring money to a separate account for months, probably preparing for Jennifer. She documented every asset, every retirement fund, every insurance policy. And she watched him lie about where he was going, watched him text Jennifer while sitting across from her at the dinner table, watched him kiss their daughters goodnight while planning to abandon them for his future. Then came the Friday that changed everything. Derek came home early, unusual for him. Nadia was in the kitchen, as always, preparing dinner. He walked in and stood in the doorway, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. We need to talk, he said. Nadia's heart raced, but her hands stayed steady as she sliced vegetables. About what? About us. About this marriage. She put down the knife and turned to face him. Okay, let's talk. Derek ran his hand over his face, a gesture she'd seen 1,000 times when he was stressed. I'm not happy, Nadia. Haven't been for a while. I see. That's it? That's all you have to say? What would you like me to say, Derek? He shifted his weight, suddenly uncomfortable. She was supposed to cry now. She realized. Supposed to beg. To ask what she'd done wrong. To promise to change. That's what he was expecting. I've met someone, he said finally. Someone who gets me. Who sees me. Jennifer from work, Nadia said calmly. His face went pale. How did you? I'm not an idiot, Derek. I'm just the woman who's been taking care of you for 15 years while you figured out I wasn't enough. The words hung between them, sharp and clean. It's not like that, he started. Then what is it like? Please, explain it to me. He seemed to gather himself, and that's when he said it. The words that would haunt him. You know what you are. You're just a prep wife, keeping everything nice and ready until the real thing comes along. Jennifer, she's my future. You're just the foundation. And foundations get buried when the building goes up. The silence that followed was absolute. Nadia looked at her husband, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. A small, cruel stranger who thought he could reduce 15 years to a punchline. Get out, she said quietly. What? Get out of my kitchen. Your kitchen? This is my house. Nadia smiled. And it was Sarah Mitchell's smile. Cold and sharp and dangerous. Is it though? We'll see what the court says about that. Now get out before I call the police and tell them I feel threatened. Derek left, slamming the door behind him. Nadia heard his car start, heard him drive away. Then she pulled out her phone and called Sarah Mitchell. He knows I know, Nadia said. It's time. Come to my office first thing Monday morning. We're filing. That weekend was the longest of Nadia's life. Derek didn't come home. The girls asked questions she couldn't answer yet. She held them close and promised everything would be okay, even though she wasn't sure what okay looked like anymore. Sunday night, alone in the bed she'd shared with Derek for 15 years, Nadia made a decision. She wasn't going to be a prep wife, a placeholder, a foundation to be buried. She was going to be the earthquake that brought the whole building down, and then she was going to build something new, something just for her. Monday morning arrived with the kind of clarity that only comes after a storm. Nadia dropped her daughters at school, hugged them a little longer than usual, and drove to Sarah Mitchell's office with a box full of documents that would dismantle her marriage piece by piece. He hasn't come back? Sarah asked, as Nadia settled into the chair across from her desk. Not once. I assume he's staying with her. Nadia's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she opened the box. I have everything you asked for. Sarah pulled out the first folder and whistled low. He's been busy. Look at this. A separate checking account opened 8 months ago. Monthly transfers of $3,000. She flipped through more pages. Stock options he never mentioned. A vacation property in Savannah purchased 2 years ago. A vacation property? Nadia's stomach dropped. We don't have a vacation property. You didn't know about it. But according to this deed, Derek Morrison certainly does. Purchased it in his name only, but with marital funds. Sarah's smile was sharp. That's going to be a problem for him. Over the next 2 hours, they built a case. Every hidden asset, every lie, every dollar Derek had squirreled away thinking Nadia was too naive or too busy managing his household to notice. But Nadia had noticed everything. She'd been trained to notice, to anticipate needs, to manage details. She'd just been managing the wrong things. I'm filing today, Sarah said. He'll be served at work tomorrow. It's going to be public and it's going to be embarrassing. Are you ready for that? Nadia thought about 15 years of making herself smaller so Derek could feel bigger. Thought about every dream she'd deferred, every piece of herself she'd tucked away. Thought about being called a prep wife in her own kitchen. I'm ready. The papers were filed by 3 o'clock. Nadia drove home in a daze, half expecting to feel regret or fear. Instead, she felt light, like she'd been carrying a weight she hadn't known was there until it was gone. Her phone rang as she pulled into the driveway. Maya. Did you do it? Her sister asked without preamble. Filed an hour ago. He'll know tomorrow. Good. That man has been taking you for granted since day one. Remember when you wanted to open your own architecture firm? When you had that offer from Patterson and Associates and he convinced you to turn it down because he needed you home? Nadia had forgotten. Or maybe she'd made herself forget. It was easier that way. Easier to believe she'd chosen this life rather than had it chosen for her piece by piece. Decision by decision. Sacrifice by sacrifice. I remember, she said quietly. Well, now you get to remember who you were before Derek Morrison decided you were supposed to be his supporting character. Come over for dinner. Bring the girls. We're celebrating. That evening, surrounded by Maya's loud, chaotic family, Nadia felt something shift. Her nieces and nephews ran through the house screaming with Amber and joy. Her brother-in-law, Thomas, grilled burgers and asked no questions, just gave her a hug that said he understood. Maya poured wine and made plans. "First thing you're doing is updating your resume," Maya declared. She was a human resources director at a tech company, all business and no nonsense. "Second, you're calling every contact you still have in architecture. Third, you're getting a haircut and some new clothes because you've been dressing like a suburban mom for too long." "I am a suburban mom," Nadia protested. "You're also a 40-year-old woman with a degree from Georgia Tech and talent that's been wasting away in that kitchen. Time to remember that." Nadia wanted to argue, but she couldn't. Because Maya was right. She'd let Derek convince her that her dreams were less important than his comfort. That her ambitions were selfish when he needed support. That being a wife and mother meant erasing everything else she could have been. The next day, Derek was served at work. Nadia knew because her phone started ringing at 10:30 in the morning. She let it go to voicemail. Then she listened to him scream through the recording. "Are you insane? You filed for divorce? You're humiliating me. Do you know who saw those papers? My boss, Nadia. My entire department. You're making me look like a fool." She saved the message. Sarah had told her to document everything, especially if Derek became aggressive or threatening. This was just angry, but it was a start. The second call came an hour later. This time Derek sounded different. Calculated. "Look, maybe we can work this out. Talk about it like adults. You don't need to involve lawyers. This is between us." Nadia deleted that one without saving it. She knew that tone. That was Derek's negotiation voice. The one he used when he wanted to control the narrative. Manage the situation. Make sure things went his way. Not this time. The third call came from a number she didn't recognize. She answered it cautiously. "Is this Nadia Morrison?" A woman's voice, young and sharp. "Who's asking?" "This is Jennifer. I think we should talk." Nadia's hand tightened on the phone. "I don't think we have anything to discuss." "Actually, we do. Derek told me everything. About how you've let yourself go. How you stopped being interesting years ago. How you trapped him in a marriage he didn't want anymore." The words should have hurt. A month ago, they would have destroyed her. But something had changed. Nadia had stopped believing Derek's version of their story. "Is that what he told you?" Nadia asked calmly. "Did he also tell you about the vacation property in Savannah he bought with our money? The investment accounts he hid? The fact that while you think you're his future, he's still legally married to me and living off my 15 years of unpaid labor?" Silence. "Here's what's going to happen, Jennifer. Derek is about to lose half of everything he has. His salary is about to be split between alimony and child support. That comfortable life he's been selling you, it's about to get very uncomfortable. So if you want him, you can have him. But you're getting the discount version." Nadia hung up before Jennifer could respond. Her hands were shaking, but she was smiling. Actually smiling. The war had begun. Over the next week, Derek tried everything. He showed up at the house demanding to talk. Nadia refused to engage without Sarah present. He tried to turn their daughters against her, telling them Mommy was being unreasonable. Amber, wise beyond her 12 years, asked him why he hadn't been home in 2 weeks. He tried to access their joint accounts, only to discover Nadia had already moved half of everything into a separate account on Sarah's advice. "You can't do this," he shouted through the front door when Nadia refused to let him in. "I can and I am. All communication goes through my lawyer. You have her number. What happened to you?" Derek asked, and he sounded genuinely confused. "You used to be sweet. Agreeable. I used to be a lot of things before I wasted 15 years on you." She closed the door in his face and went back to the kitchen, where she was cooking dinner for herself and her daughters. Not Derek's favorite meals anymore. Not perfectly plated presentations designed to make him feel like a king. Just simple, good food for people who appreciated her. That night, after the girls went to bed, Nadia pulled out her old portfolio. Sketches and designs from college. Projects she'd been proud of. Dreams she'd had before they got buried under laundry, and meal planning and making sure Derek's life ran smoothly. There was talent there. Real talent. Buildings that played with light and space. Affordable housing designs that prioritized community. A series of sketches for a mixed-use development that could transform struggling neighborhoods. She'd been good. Really good. Could she still be? Her phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Discovery hearing scheduled for next month. He's going to try to hide assets. We need to be ready. Nadia texted back. I'm ready. And she was. Because Derek had made a critical mistake. He'd underestimated her, had seen her as nothing more than the woman who made his breakfast and raised his children and kept his house running. He'd forgotten that she was smart, capable, and had spent 15 years managing every detail of their lives. She knew where everything was. Every account, every investment, every asset. She'd been the one handling it all, while he took credit for their financial success. Now she was going to use that knowledge to take him apart. The following Tuesday, Nadia had lunch with Patricia Chen, an old classmate from Georgia Tech who now ran her own architecture firm in Atlanta. They met at a small cafe downtown, and Patricia arrived in a sharp suit with blueprints under her arm. Nadia Morrison, Patricia said, hugging her. It's been what? 15 years? About that. They ordered. And Patricia got straight to business. Maya told me you're getting divorced and looking to get back into architecture. I have to be honest. 15 years is a long gap, but I looked at your old portfolio, the one you submitted for that design competition senior year. You were brilliant. Are you still brilliant? Nadia laughed, surprised at the directness. I don't know. I haven't designed anything in 15 years. Then it's time to find out. I've got a project coming up. Affordable housing development in East Atlanta. Community-focused, sustainable, exactly the kind of thing you used to be passionate about. I need someone who can think creatively, who understands how people actually live. You interested in consulting? Consulting? Contract work. Flexible hours so you can handle your divorce and your kids. If it works out, we can talk about something more permanent. But Nadia, I'm not doing this as a favor. I need good work. Can you deliver? Nadia thought about her kitchen. About 15 years of delivering perfect meals and perfect spaces and perfect support. About skills she'd honed managing a household. Understanding how people move through spaces. Creating environments that worked. Yes, she said. I can deliver. They shook hands, and Nadia left the cafe feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Excited about her future. That excitement lasted until she got home and found Derek's car in the driveway. He was sitting on the front steps, and he looked terrible. Unshaven, rumpled suit, eyes red like he hadn't been sleeping. We need to talk, he said as she approached. Through our lawyers. Nadia, please. Just 5 minutes. Against her better judgment, she sat down on the steps beside him, keeping distance between them. 5 minutes. Derek looked at his hands. I made a mistake. With Jennifer. With all of it. I got caught up in feeling young again. Feeling like I had options. But I was wrong. You're my wife. The mother of my children. We've built a life together. A life you called preparation for your real future. He flinched. I was angry. I didn't mean it. Yes, you did. That's the problem, Derek. You meant every word. You just didn't expect me to do anything about it. What do you want? He asked. And now his voice had an edge. You want me to grovel? Beg? Tell you I can't live without you? I want you to leave. This is my house. No. Nadia said calmly. This is our house. And according to my lawyer, I have every right to be here while you don't. So either leave voluntarily or I call the police. Your choice. Derek stood up, towering over her. For a moment, Nadia felt a flicker of fear. Then Amber's voice came from the doorway. Mom? Is everything okay? Derek's face changed instantly, softening. Hey baby girl. I was just talking to your mom. It didn't look like talking. It looked like you were trying to scare her. Amber crossed her arms, looking exactly like Nadia had at that age. Strong. Unafraid. You should go. The fact that his own daughter was telling him to leave seemed to break something in Derek. He walked to his car without another word. But before he got in, he turned back. You're going to regret this, he said. All of this. The only thing I regret, Nadia replied, is not doing it sooner. She watched him drive away, then turned to her daughter. Amber was crying silently, tears running down her face. Come here, baby. Nadia pulled her close. I know this is hard. Is he gone? Like really gone? Yeah, baby, he's really gone. Good, Amber said fiercely. He's mean now. He's not like he used to be. Nadia wondered if Derek had ever been different, or if she'd just been too busy trying to be perfect to notice the cracks. Either way, it didn't matter anymore. That night, after both girls were asleep, Nadia sat at the kitchen table with Patricia's project brief and a sketch pad. Her hand moved slowly at first, rusty from disuse, but then muscle memory kicked in, and she was drawing, creating, designing. Hours passed. When she finally looked up, the sky was lightening with dawn, and she had the beginnings of something good. A community space that flowed into residential units, balconies that created natural gathering spaces, sustainable materials that would make the project affordable without sacrificing beauty. It was rough, but it was a start. Her phone buzzed with a text from Derek. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life." Nadia looked at her sketches, at the possibilities spreading across the pages in front of her. Then she looked at the empty side of the bed where Derek used to sleep, at the quiet house she was learning to love again, at the future she was building from the rubble of her marriage. She texted back, "No. Marrying you was." Then she blocked his number and went back to her designs. The prep wife was dead. Something much more dangerous was being born. The discovery hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in late October. Nadia wore a navy suit Maya had helped her pick out, her hair professionally styled, minimal makeup that made her look competent and serious. She looked like the architect she used to be, the woman she was becoming again. Derek sat across the courtroom with his lawyer, a man named Richard Pemberton who looked like he charged by the minute just to breathe. Derek had dressed for sympathy, wearing a simple gray suit, trying to look like the victim of an unreasonable woman's midlife crisis. Sarah Mitchell leaned over and whispered, "He's going to claim he doesn't have access to half these accounts, that you're exaggerating his assets. Stay calm. Let me handle it." The judge, a black woman in her 60s named Judge Carolyn Hughes, reviewed the documents with the kind of thoroughness that made Derek shift nervously in his seat. "Mr. Morrison," Judge Hughes said without looking up, "it says here you've been transferring significant amounts of money to a separate account for the past 8 months. Can you explain that?" Richard Pemberton stood. "Your Honor, my client was merely planning for his future financial security. There's nothing unusual about maintaining separate accounts with marital funds." Judge Hughes looked up now, her gaze sharp. "Mrs. Morrison, did you know about this account?" Nadia stood. "No, Your Honor. I had no knowledge of it until I began preparing for this divorce." "And the property in Savannah?" "I didn't know about that either. I discovered it when I went through our financial records." Judge Hughes turned to Derek. "Mr. Morrison, is it true you purchased property without your wife's knowledge?" Derek stood slowly. "Your Honor, I was planning it as a surprise. An investment for our family. A surprise that you never mentioned in 2 years." The judge's skepticism was palpable. "And these investment accounts, the stock options, the retirement fund you transferred $40,000 out of last month, all surprises." Sarah stood. "Your Honor, if I may, Mr. Morrison has been systematically hiding marital assets in preparation for leaving his wife. He's been having an affair with a coworker for at least 8 months, possibly longer. During that time, he moved money, purchased property, and created a financial safety net for himself while leaving Mrs. Morrison, who hasn't worked outside the home in 15 years, with nothing." "That's not true," Derek burst out. "She has access to our joint accounts. She's not destitute." "Joint accounts that you tried to drain 3 weeks ago," Sarah countered. "Fortunately, my client had the foresight to protect half of those assets before you could hide them with the rest." Judge Hughes held up her hand for silence. "Here's what's going to happen. Mr. Morrison, you're going to provide complete documentation of every account, every asset, every investment you control. Mrs. Morrison is entitled to half of all marital property, and right now, it looks like you've been trying to ensure she doesn't get what she's owed." "Your Honor, my client has been the primary breadwinner for 15 years, Pemberton argued. "Mrs. Morrison chose to stay home. That was her decision." Nadia felt Sarah tense beside her, ready to pounce, but Judge Hughes beat her to it. "Mr. Pemberton, Mrs. Morrison didn't just stay home. She managed a household, raised 2 children, and enabled your client to focus entirely on his career without worrying about domestic responsibilities. That's labor, and it has value. Georgia is an equitable distribution state, and I intend to ensure Mrs. Morrison receives what she's entitled to. We're adjourning for 30 days. Mr. Morrison, you'll provide complete financial disclosure. If I find out you've hidden or moved any additional assets, it won't go well for you." The gavel came down, and Nadia felt something loosen in her chest. Victory, maybe. Or just validation that she wasn't crazy. Wasn't selfish. Wasn't the villain Derek had tried to paint her as. Outside the courthouse, Sarah was practically glowing. Did you see his face when the judge called out his financial games? That was beautiful. What happens now? Nadia asked. Now we wait for full disclosure, which he'll try to drag out. But we've got time on our side. The longer this takes, the more alimony you're entitled to. And with his affair on record, the judge is not inclined to be generous to him. Nadia's phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. How did it go? Good. Nadia typed back. Really good. Excellent. Because I need those revised plans by Monday. Client meeting Tuesday. Nadia had been working on Patricia's project for 3 weeks now, and it was coming together. More than that, she was coming together. Every hour spent designing felt like reclaiming a piece of herself she'd thought was gone forever. The project was challenging. Affordable housing that didn't look affordable. Community spaces that encouraged interaction without forcing it. Sustainable design on a tight budget. It required creativity and problem-solving. Skills she'd once had in abundance. It turned out she still did. That weekend, Amber asked the question Nadia had been dreading. Mom, is Dad going to come back? They were in the kitchen, Nadia teaching her daughter to make homemade pasta the way her own grandmother had taught her. Joy was in the living room, absorbed in a book. No, baby, he's not. Good. Amber pressed the pasta dough with more force than necessary. That's good, right? Why do you think it's good? Amber was quiet for a moment, rolling out the dough with careful precision. Because you laugh now. You didn't used to laugh. You used to just, I don't know, exist. Like you were a ghost in your own house. The observation was so accurate it hurt. Did it seem that bad? Not bad exactly, just sad. Like you were always trying so hard to make everything perfect. But nothing was ever perfect enough. Amber looked up, her eyes too knowing for 12. He made you sad, Mom. Even before he left. So yeah, it's good he's gone. Nadia pulled her daughter close, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. You're pretty smart. You know that? I know. I get it from you. Monday morning, Nadia presented her revised plans to Patricia and the client, a nonprofit developer named Michael Washington, who was passionate about creating affordable housing that didn't warehouse people but actually built community. This is impressive, Michael said, studying her designs. These common spaces here, the way they flow between units, it creates natural gathering points without feeling forced. And you've managed to keep costs down by using modular construction for the residential units while making the community center unique. The idea is that everyone has the same quality housing, but the shared spaces become the identity of the community. People take pride in what they share. Nadia felt herself settling into the presentation, remembering this feeling, the confidence of knowing her work was good, and by elevating the community center architecturally, we're sending a message that these residents deserve beauty, not just function. Patricia was grinning. Michael, I told you she was good. You weren't kidding. Nadia, how would you feel about presenting this to the City Planning Committee next month? We need approval for the zoning variance, and having the architect there to explain the vision could help. Nadia's first instinct was to say no, to defer to Patricia, to make herself smaller. Then she remembered Derek's face in the courtroom, remembered being called a prep wife, remembered 15 years of making herself less so someone else could be more. I'd be happy to, she said. That evening, riding high on the success of the presentation, Nadia made a decision. She called a real estate agent. I want to sell the house, she told Maya on the phone later. Are you sure? That's a big step. I'm sure. This house was Derek's dream, Derek's taste, Derek's everything. I decorated it the way he wanted, maintained it the way he wanted. It's time for something that's mine. Where will you go? Something smaller. Something I can afford on my own income once the divorce is final. Something the girls and I can make ours. The real estate agent came by that weekend. Her name was Veronica, a sharp woman in her 40s who walked through the house with a professional eye. It's beautiful, Veronica said. Pristine condition. You've taken excellent care of it. 15 years of practice, Nadia said dryly. In this market, this neighborhood, I'd estimate around 700,000. Maybe more. It'll sell fast. 700,000. Half of that was hers. $350,000 to start over. To build something new. Let's do it, Nadia said. The for sale sign went up on Tuesday. Derek found out by Thursday. He showed up at the house that evening, furious. Nadia saw him coming and locked the doors, calling Sarah. He's here. He's angry about the house. Do not engage. Call the police if he tries to force entry. I'm documenting this. Derek pounded on the door. You can't sell this house. It's my house. Nadia opened the window above the porch. Actually, it's our house. And my lawyer says I have every right to sell it as long as you get your half of the proceeds. So, unless you want to buy me out, it's going on the market. Where are you going to live? Where are my daughters going to live? Your daughters and I will be fine. Better than fine. We'll be somewhere that's ours, not a shrine to your ego. Derek's face went red. You've changed. You've become vindictive and cruel. No, Derek. I've become honest. And you don't like it because you preferred me dishonest, pretending everything was fine while you planned your exit strategy. A car pulled up. Jennifer's car. She got out, and Nadia had her first real look at the woman who'd been sleeping with her husband. Young, probably late 20s, pretty in that generic way that came from good lighting and careful makeup. She looked uncomfortable, like she'd been dragged into a situation she wasn't prepared for. Is this really necessary? Jennifer called up. Can't you two just talk like adults? Nadia laughed, a sound with no humor in it. Tell me, Jennifer, did Derek mention he's about to owe me half of everything he has? Did he explain that his take-home pay is going to be split between alimony and child support? Or did he just tell you about the exciting future you two would have? Jennifer's face shifted, uncertainty creeping in. Here's something else he probably didn't mention. Nadia continued. He told me I was a prep wife, that I was just keeping things warm until the real thing came along. So, congratulations, you're the real thing. Hope it's everything you dreamed of. A police car turned onto the street, called by one of the neighbors presumably. Derek saw it and immediately backed away from the door, switching to his reasonable voice, the one he used with authority figures. Officer, this is just a misunderstanding. That's my wife up there. We're going through a difficult time. The officer, a young black man who looked tired, glanced from Derek to Nadia. Ma'am, is there a problem? My soon-to-be ex-husband is upset about me selling our marital home, which I have every legal right to do. I asked him to leave. He refused. The officer turned to Derek. Sir, if she's asked you to leave and this is her primary residence, you need to go. This is my house. Not according to the law if you don't live here and she does. You need to leave now, or I'll have to escort you out. Derek looked like he wanted to argue, but Jennifer touched his arm. Come on. This isn't worth it. They left, and Nadia thanked the officer. After he drove away, she sat on her pristine couch in her perfect living room and felt nothing but relief that soon, none of this would be hers to maintain. That night, she showed Amber and Joy the listings she'd been looking at. Smaller houses, older neighborhoods, places with character instead of perfection. What about this one? Joy asked, pointing to a craftsman bungalow in a neighborhood full of trees. It has a porch swing and a big backyard. Amber added, we could get a dog. A dog? Nadia laughed. Derek never wanted pets. Exactly, Amber said. So we should definitely get one. They made an appointment to see the house that weekend. It was smaller than what they had, quirky with its sloped floors and original woodwork, and Nadia fell in love with it immediately. It had space for a home office where she could work, a kitchen that was functional but not overwhelming, a yard where her daughters could play. It was 700 square feet smaller than their current house and cost $200,000 less. It was perfect. Can we afford it? Amber asked quietly. Nadia did the math in her head. With her half of the house sale, with the alimony she'd be getting, with the income from her consulting work that was looking more and more like a permanent position. Yes, they could afford it. We can afford it, she said. Should we put in an offer? Both girls screamed yes loud enough to make the real estate agent jump. The offer was accepted the next day. Close of escrow in 60 days. Just enough time for their current house to sell and for Nadia to figure out the logistics of moving. Sarah called that evening with news. Derek's full financial disclosure came through. Want to guess what we found? More hidden accounts. Better. He's been paying for Jennifer's apartment for the past 6 months. $800 a month, straight from a marital account. That's marital funds used to support an extramarital affair. What does that mean? It means Judge Hughes is going to be very interested in this. It could affect the settlement significantly. It shows he was using your money to fund his affair while preparing to leave you with nothing. Nadia thought about $800 a month. That was groceries. That was utilities. That was money she'd been careful with. Budgeting, stretching, making sure their household ran smoothly. And Derek had been using it to set up his mistress in an apartment. When's the next hearing? Nadia asked. 2 weeks. And Nadia? Start thinking about what you want. Because with this evidence, you're in a strong position to get it. What did she want? For weeks, she'd been so focused on surviving, on not falling apart, on protecting her daughters and building something new, that she hadn't really thought about what victory looked like. Now she did. She wanted Derek to understand what he'd thrown away. She wanted him to see her succeed without him. She wanted her daughters to know that their mother was more than a prep wife, more than a placeholder, more than the woman who'd made his life comfortable. She wanted to win. And for the first time in 15 years, Nadia Morrison knew exactly how to make that happen. The settlement hearing arrived with the crisp chill of November. Nadia walked into the courthouse, feeling different than she had 6 weeks ago. She'd lost weight without trying, her body shedding the stress she'd been carrying for years. Her suit was new, tailored, professional. She looked like someone who mattered, because she'd finally started believing she did. Derek looked worse. His hair was graying at the temples in a way that aged him. The suit he wore was rumpled, like he'd slept in it. Jennifer wasn't with him this time, and Nadia wondered if the reality of Derek's financial situation had finally sunk in for his future. Judge Hughes reviewed the new financial disclosures with an expression that could freeze water. When she finally looked up, her gaze landed on Derek with the weight of disapproval. Mr. Morrison, I've reviewed the complete financial records, the payments to Miss Jennifer Caldwell's apartment, the continued transfers to hidden accounts even after the initial hearing, the attempted sale of stock options last week that you failed to disclose. She paused, letting the silence stretch. Do you think I'm stupid? Richard Pemberton stood quickly. Your Honor, your client was simply trying to defraud his wife of her share of marital assets. Sit down, Mr. Pemberton. Judge Hughes turned to Sarah. Mrs. Mitchell, what is your client seeking? Sarah stood, and Nadia could see the satisfaction in her posture. This was the moment they'd been building toward. Your Honor, Mrs. Morrison is seeking 50% of all marital assets, including the marital home, the Savannah property, all investment and retirement accounts, and stock options. She's also seeking alimony of $5,000 per month for 7 years, which is less than half the length of the marriage, and accounts for her 15-year absence from the workforce. Additionally, she seeks child support of $2,000 per month for both minor children, private school tuition, and all medical expenses. Derek shot to his feet. $7,000 a month? That's robbery. Mr. Morrison, you will remain seated and silent unless I address you directly. Judge Hughes snapped. Mrs. Mitchell, continue. Mrs. Morrison is also seeking full legal and physical custody of the minor children, with visitation for Mr. Morrison contingent on his ability to provide stable housing and his commitment to their welfare. Your Honor, this is excessive, Pemberton argued. My client cannot afford these amounts. His salary, while substantial, is not unlimited. Judge Hughes looked at her documents. According to these records, Mr. Morrison makes $220,000 annually. After taxes, that's approximately $12,000 per month take-home. Mrs. Mitchell is asking for $7,000 of that. While substantial, Mr. Morrison was willing to spend $800 monthly on his paramour's housing. He can afford to support his wife and children. Ex-wife, Derek muttered. Not yet, Mr. Morrison. And given your behavior, you should be grateful, Mrs. Morrison is only asking for 7 years of alimony and not lifetime support, which I could award given the length of the marriage and your egregious conduct. Nadia watched Derek's face pale. He'd thought he could walk away clean. Start fresh with Jennifer. Keep most of his money. He'd underestimated her. Underestimated the judge. Underestimated how badly his lies and hidden assets would hurt him. Judge Hughes continued. Here's my ruling. Mrs. Morrison is awarded 50% of all marital assets, including both properties. The marital home will be sold and proceeds split equally. Mr. Morrison will have 30 days to buy out Mrs. Morrison's share of the Savannah property at fair market value, or that property will also be sold. Alimony is set at $5,000 per month for 7 years. Child support is set at $2,000 per month until both children reach 18 or complete college, whichever comes later. Mr. Morrison will also pay for private school tuition and all medical expenses not covered by insurance. Your Honor, Pemberton started. I'm not finished. Additionally, Mr. Morrison will pay Mrs. Morrison's legal fees in the amount of $45,000, as his actions in hiding assets necessitated extensive discovery and legal work. He will also split his 401k and pension benefits equally with Mrs. Morrison. Visitation will be every other weekend and one evening per week, contingent on Mr. Morrison maintaining appropriate housing and demonstrating emotional stability. Derek looked like he'd been punched. This is insane. You're destroying my life. Judge Hughes fixed him with a stare that could cut glass. Mr. Morrison, you destroyed your own life when you chose to have an affair, hide marital assets, and attempt to defraud your wife. You used marital funds to support your mistress while your wife managed your home and raised your children. You called her a prep wife, a placeholder for your real future. Well, congratulations. This is your real future. You're dismissed. The gavel came down with the finality of a door slamming shut. Outside the courthouse, Sarah was practically dancing. Did you see his face? $7,000 a month, plus your share of the house sale and the Savannah property. Nadia, you're looking at close to $500,000 in liquid assets, plus ongoing support. You won. You actually won. Nadia felt tears prickling her eyes, but they weren't sad tears. They were relief, validation, the emotional release of being believed and protected by a system she'd feared might side with Derek. Thank you, she said to Sarah, for everything. Thank you for having impeccable records and the spine to see this through. Some women would have backed down when he started fighting back. You stood firm. Sarah squeezed her hand. Now go live your life. The good one. The one you deserve. Nadia drove to Patricia's office, where she'd scheduled a meeting for that afternoon. She was exhausted, emotionally wrung out, but she had work to do. The City Planning Committee presentation was in 3 days, and she needed to be ready. Patricia took one look at her face and poured her a cup of coffee. How'd it go? I won. Everything I asked for. Good. That bastard deserved it. Patricia pulled up a presentation on her computer. Now let's talk about your future, not your past. The planning committee is going to push back on the design. Too expensive, they'll say. Not practical. But here's what they don't understand. This project will revitalize the entire neighborhood. It's not just affordable housing. It's community building. They spent 3 hours refining the presentation, anticipating objections, building counter-arguments. By the time Nadia left, her head was spinning with zoning codes and construction timelines and budget projections. It was complicated and challenging, and she loved every minute of it. Her phone buzzed as she drove home. A text from Derek. I hope you're happy. You've ruined me. Nadia pulled over and typed back. I didn't ruin you. I held you accountable. There's a difference. His response came immediately. The girls are going to hate you for this. That one stung. Nadia called Amber on FaceTime. Hey Mom, what's up? I need to tell you something about the court hearing today. She explained the ruling, the money, the visitation schedule. Amber listened quietly, her face serious. So we're going to be okay? Amber asked finally. Like financially okay. We're going to be more than okay, baby. We're going to be good. And Dad's mad about it. Very mad. Amber nodded slowly. He texted me. Said you were being unfair. Said he couldn't afford an apartment now because you took everything. Nadia's hands tightened on the steering wheel. What did you tell him? I told him you didn't take anything. You just kept what was yours. Amber's voice was firm, older than her 12 years. He's been lying, Mom. To you, to us, to everyone. So if he's mad now, that's his problem. You didn't do anything wrong. After they hung up, Nadia sat in her car and cried. Not from sadness or fear, but from gratitude, that her daughter understood, that she wasn't alone in this. The City Planning Committee meeting was held in a conference room downtown. Nadia arrived early, setting up her presentation boards and laptop, checking and rechecking her notes. Michael Washington arrived with Patricia, both of them projecting confidence. You've got this, Patricia whispered as the committee members filed in. The committee was exactly what Nadia expected. 7 people, mostly older, mostly skeptical, looking at her like she was wasting their time. Nadia stood and began her presentation. Good afternoon. I'm Nadia Morrison, the architect for the East Atlanta Community Housing Project. Today I want to show you how thoughtful design can transform not just buildings, but neighborhoods. She clicked through her slides, showing renderings of the development. Buildings that used modular construction to keep costs down while incorporating design elements that gave them character. A community center with soaring windows and gathering spaces. Courtyards designed to encourage interaction. Green spaces that provided both beauty and function. The traditional approach to affordable housing treats it as a problem to be solved as cheaply as possible, Nadia continued. But people aren't problems. They're community members who deserve housing that dignifies them. This design does that without breaking the budget. One committee member, a man in his 60s with skeptical eyes, raised his hand. Miss Morrison, this all looks very nice, but nice isn't practical. How do you justify the cost of this community center when that money could go toward more units? Because the community center is what makes this a neighborhood instead of just housing, Nadia responded. It provides space for after-school programs, job training, community meetings. It's an investment in the people who live there. Studies show that affordable housing developments with strong community spaces have lower turnover, better maintenance, and stronger resident satisfaction. In the long run, it saves money. Another member spoke up, a woman in her 40s. What about the parking situation? This looks like it's under the usual requirement. We're 1 block from a bus line and half a mile from a MARTA station. By reducing parking, we freed up space for community gardens and play areas. Plus, we're targeting residents who don't own cars or who use public transportation. We're designing for how people actually live, not for arbitrary parking requirements. The questions came faster then, about costs and timelines and materials. Nadia answered each one, drawing on knowledge she didn't know she still had, solving problems in real time the way she used to in school, before Derek convinced her that her career mattered less than his comfort. Finally, the committee chair called for a vote on the zoning variance. All in favor. 5 hands went up. Opposed. 2 hands, including the skeptical man from earlier. The variance is approved. Miss Morrison, congratulations. This is an impressive project. Outside, Patricia hugged her so hard, Nadia's ribs creaked. You killed it, you absolutely killed it. I can't believe it went through, Nadia said, still stunned. I can. You're brilliant. You always were. Patricia pulled back, studying her face. So here's the thing. I've been impressed with your work on this project. Really impressed. I want to offer you a permanent position. Senior architect, 40% share of project profits, flexible schedule. What do you say? Nadia felt tears welling up again. Are you serious? Completely. You're good, Nadia. Better than good. And you understand something a lot of architects forget. We're designing for people, not for awards. I need that on my team. Yes, Nadia said. Yes, absolutely yes. That evening, Nadia took her daughters to their favorite restaurant to celebrate. They ordered too much food and laughed too loud, and Nadia felt lighter than she had in years. So you have a real job now? Joy asked. Tomato sauce on her chin. A real job, Nadia confirmed. And we're moving to the house with the porch swing? Next month. And Dad has to pay for everything? Amber asked. More cautious. Dad has to contribute his fair share, yes, but we're going to be fine even without that. I'm making my own money now. Joy raised her glass of lemonade. To Mom, who's basically a superhero. They clinked glasses, and Nadia looked at her daughters, these 2 people she'd raised, who were watching her rebuild her life and learning what it looked like when a woman refused to stay broken. Her phone buzzed. A text from Derek. Jennifer left me. Said she didn't sign up for this. Hope you're happy. Nadia deleted it without responding. Derek's relationships weren't her problem anymore. His happiness wasn't her responsibility. For 15 years, she'd centered her entire existence around his needs, his comfort, his success. That woman was gone. A week later, the closing on their house went through. Nadia stood in the empty living room one last time, remembering the woman who'd lived there. The one who'd spent 15 years trying to be perfect, trying to be enough, never realizing that the problem wasn't her inadequacy but his inability to see her value. You ready? Maya asked from the doorway. Yeah, Nadia said. I'm ready. They drove to the new house, where movers were already unloading furniture. It was chaos, boxes everywhere, girls running through rooms claiming spaces, Maya directing traffic while Thomas set up beds. But it was their chaos. Their home. Their new beginning. That night, After everyone had left and the girls were asleep in their new rooms, Nadia sat on the porch swing, with a glass of wine and her sketchbook. The neighborhood was quiet, tree-lined streets with other older homes, people who'd lived here for decades, mixing with young families just starting out. She started drawing. Not the community housing project, not anything work-related, just a building she'd been imagining, all curves and light, the kind of place that made people stop and stare. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Nadia Morrison. A man's voice, professional. Yes? My name is James Chen. I'm on the board of the Atlanta Architecture Association. I was at your planning committee presentation last week. Sat in the back. I was extremely impressed. Thank you. We have an award ceremony coming up, recognizing emerging talent in the field. I'd like to nominate you. Your East Atlanta project represents exactly the kind of innovative, community-focused design we want to celebrate. Would you be interested? Nadia looked at her house, her porch swing, her sketchbook full of possibilities. Yes, she said. I would be very interested. After she hung up, she sat in the dark and smiled. Derek had called her a prep wife, a placeholder, a foundation to be buried. When the real building went up, he'd been wrong about everything. She wasn't the foundation. She was the architect, and she was just getting started. The Atlanta Architecture Association's award ceremony was held in mid-December at the Four Seasons Hotel downtown. Nadia stood in front of her bathroom mirror, adjusting the dress Maya had insisted she buy, a deep emerald green that made her dark skin glow. Elegant without trying too hard. You look beautiful, Mom, Amber said from the doorway. You think so? Nadia turned, suddenly nervous. It's not too much. It's perfect. You're perfect. Amber came in and hugged her. I'm proud of you. Like, really proud. Joy poked her head in. Can we come to the fancy party? Not this time, baby. But Aunt Maya's taking you two for pizza and a movie. Next time, I promise. The girls left with Maya, and Nadia drove downtown alone, her invitation in her purse, her heart beating faster than it should. This was just an award ceremony. She probably wouldn't even win. But somehow it felt bigger than that, like a confirmation that she was real, that her work mattered, that the past 6 months of rebuilding herself hadn't been a delusion. The ballroom was elegant, filled with Atlanta's architecture community. Nadia recognized some faces from the planning committee, others from her college days. Patricia waved from across the room, standing with Michael Washington and several other developers. You made it. Patricia hugged her. Come meet people. Network. This is your night. The next hour was a blur of introductions and conversations. Architects who'd seen her work, developers interested in collaborating, a journalist from Atlanta Magazine who wanted to do a feature on the East Atlanta project. Nadia's business cards printed just last week disappeared from her clutch, one by one. She was talking to a potential client about a mixed-use development when she saw him. Derek. He stood near the bar, conspicuously out of place in a suit that looked expensive but somehow cheap on him. He wasn't invited. This was an architecture industry event, and he worked in marketing. He'd come specifically to see her. Their eyes met across the room. Derek raised his glass in a mocking salute, then started walking toward her. Excuse me, Nadia said to the developer. I'll be right back. She intercepted Derek before he could reach Patricia's group. What are you doing here? Supporting my wife's big moment, Derek said, his words slightly slurred. He'd been drinking. Sorry, ex-wife. I forget sometimes. You need to leave. This is a public event, Nadia. I have as much right to be here as you do. He looked around, taking in the crowd, the elegance, the success that radiated from every corner. Look at you. Playing architect. It's cute. I'm not playing anything. I am an architect. I always was. You just convinced me I wasn't. Derek laughed, bitter and sharp. You know what's funny? I actually believed you'd fall apart. Thought you'd come crawling back, begging me to make things work. But instead, you're here. Living your best life while mine falls apart. That's not my fault, Derek. Isn't it? His voice rose, drawing attention. You took everything. My house, my money, my dignity. Jennifer left because I couldn't afford the life I promised her. My boss is questioning my judgment. My daughters barely speak to me. You destroyed me, Nadia. Patricia appeared at her elbow. Is there a problem? No problem, Derek said, focusing his attention on Patricia. Just congratulating my ex-wife on her success. Built on my money, by the way. I paid for her degree, supported her for 15 years, and now she's acting like she did this all herself. You supported yourself, Nadia said quietly. I raised your children, managed your home, freed you to focus entirely on your career. That was my contribution to your success. This, she gestured to the room. This is mine. Built on my talent, my work, my effort. You don't get to take credit for this. Ladies and gentlemen, a voice called from the front of the room. If you could please take your seats. We're about to begin the ceremony. Derek grabbed Nadia's arm as she turned to go. This isn't over. She pulled free, and her voice was ice. Yes, Derek. It is. Security appeared, then two men in suits who'd been watching the exchange. Sir, do you have an invitation to this event? Derek's face flushed red. I don't need an invitation. I'm with her. No, Nadia said clearly. He's not with me. He wasn't invited and I'd like him removed. As security escorted Derek out, Nadia heard him shouting about lawsuits and defamation and revenge. The room had gone quiet, everyone watching the spectacle. Nadia felt heat flood her face, embarrassment mixing with anger. Then Patricia started clapping. Slowly at first, then louder. Others joined in until the entire room was applauding not for Derek's removal, but for Nadia's strength in having him removed. That, Patricia said, was handled with grace. Now let's go get you an award. The ceremony was beautiful. James Chen gave the opening remarks, talking about architecture as a form of social responsibility, about designing for communities rather than egos. There were several categories: innovation, sustainability, historic preservation. Nadia's category was last, emerging talent. This year's recipient has been away from the field for 15 years, James said. But her return has been nothing short of remarkable. Her design for the East Atlanta Community Housing Project represents everything we value in architecture: innovation, social consciousness, and a deep understanding of how people actually live. This year's Emerging Talent Award goes to Nadia Morrison. The applause was thunderous. Nadia walked to the stage in a daze, accepting the crystal trophy that caught the light and threw rainbows across the room. Thank you, she said into the microphone, her voice shaking. I almost didn't come back to architecture. I convinced myself that ship had sailed, that I'd made my choice, that it was too late. But I learned something these past few months. It's never too late to remember who you are. It's never too late to reclaim what you gave away. And it's never too late to build something new from the ruins of what didn't work. She looked out at the crowd, at Patricia beaming with pride, at faces she didn't know who were nodding in understanding. Someone recently called me a prep wife. Said I was just keeping things warm until the real thing came along. And you know what? He was right. I was preparing. But not for him. I was preparing for this moment, for remembering that I'm not defined by who I serve, but by what I create. Thank you for this honor. Thank you for welcoming me back. And thank you for reminding me why I fell in love with architecture in the first place. Because we have the power to change how people live. The applause followed her back to her seat. The rest of the evening was a blur of congratulations and business cards and opportunities. A firm in Buckhead wanted her to consult on a senior living development. A nonprofit needed affordable housing designs for 3 different locations. The Atlanta magazine journalist scheduled an interview for next week. By the time Nadia left the hotel, it was nearly midnight. She sat in her car for a moment, looking at the trophy in the passenger seat, trying to process everything that had happened. Her phone buzzed. A text from Amber. Did you win? I won. 3 dots appeared immediately then. We knew you would. Love you, Mom. Nadia drove home through empty streets, Atlanta's skyline glittering in her rearview mirror. She thought about Derek's face when security removed him. The anger and incomprehension that she was succeeding without him. Part of her felt bad for him. He'd lost so much. Destroyed his own life through his choices. But mostly, she felt free. When she got home, she found Maya waiting on her porch swing with a bottle of champagne. Couldn't wait to hear about it. Maya said, "Tell me everything." They sat there until 2 in the morning, Nadia recounting every detail. The award, Derek's appearance, the opportunities that had materialized. Maya listened and laughed and hugged her and said, I told you that you were stronger than you knew. I didn't believe you, Nadia admitted. I know. But you believe it now. The week before Christmas, Nadia received a letter from Derek's lawyer. He was appealing the settlement, claiming it was excessive and unfair. Sarah called as soon as she received her copy. He won't win, Sarah said. The settlement was fair, and Judge Hughes documented his bad behavior extensively. This is just Derek being petty. It'll cost him more in legal fees than he'll save. So what do I do? Nothing. Live your life. Let me handle this. Nadia took that advice. She threw herself into work on the East Atlanta project, which was breaking ground in January. She spent Christmas with her daughters in their new home, decorating their tree with ornaments they picked out together, cooking food they all liked instead of Derek's favorites, creating new traditions. On Christmas Eve, Amber asked, "Do you think Dad's okay?" They were making cookies, flour dusting the countertops, the house warm and smelling like cinnamon. "I don't know, baby. But that's not our job anymore. He made his choices. We made ours. I miss him sometimes," Amber said quietly. "Not the him from this year, the him from before, when he was nicer." "I miss that version too," Nadia admitted. "But I don't think he was ever really that person. I think we just saw what we wanted to see." Joy, who'd been listening while decorating cookies with alarming amounts of frosting, spoke up. "I like this better. Us. Just us. It's quieter but it's happier." "Yeah," Amber agreed. "It is." New Year's Eve arrived with cold rain and the promise of a fresh start. Nadia declined invitations to parties, choosing instead to stay home with her daughters. They watched the ball drop on TV, toasted with sparkling cider, and made resolutions. "I want to make the honor roll," Joy declared. "I want to learn guitar," Amber said. They both looked at Nadia. "What about you, Mom?" Nadia thought about everything the past year had brought. The betrayal and divorce, the rediscovery of herself, the career she'd reclaimed, the life she was building from scratch. "I want to design something beautiful," she said. "Something that matters. Something that's completely mine." "You already did that," Amber said, gesturing to their home, to the three of them sitting together. "You designed this." In February, Derek's appeal was denied. Judge Hughes issued a ruling that began with the sentence. The court finds Mr. Morrison's appeal to be without merit and motivated by spite rather than justice. She ordered him to pay Nadia's legal fees for defending against the appeal, another $12,000. Sarah called with the news, laughing. "He keeps trying and keeps losing. At this rate, he'll have paid you double what you're owed in legal fees alone." "Is it wrong that I'm not sorry?" Nadia asked. "Nadia, you spent 15 years apologizing for taking up space. You don't need to apologize for winning now." In March, the East Atlanta project broke ground. Nadia stood at the construction site with Patricia and Michael, watching bulldozers clear the lot, and felt a surge of something that might have been joy. "This is really happening," she said. "Because of you," Patricia reminded her. "Your design. Your vision." The Atlanta magazine feature came out that month. A full spread with photos of Nadia at the construction site, in her home office, with her daughters on their porch swing. The headline read, "Rising from the Ashes: How One Architect Rebuilt Her Life and Career." The article was honest, detailing her divorce, her years away from the field, her dramatic return. But it focused more on her work, her vision, her contributions to affordable housing design. It made her sound important, accomplished, successful. Because she was. Derek saw the article. She knew because he sent a single text, "Congratulations. You got everything you wanted." Nadia looked at that message for a long time before responding. "No, Derek. I got everything I deserved. There's a difference." She blocked his number after that. There was nothing left to say. In April, on what would have been her 16th wedding anniversary, Nadia took herself to dinner. Not to celebrate the marriage that deserved no celebration, but to mark the year since everything had changed. A year since she'd been called a prep wife and decided to show what a prep divorce looked like. She'd lost a husband but gained herself, lost a marriage but gained a career, lost the illusion of security but gained actual strength. The restaurant was quiet, elegant. Nadia ordered well, drank good wine, and sketched designs for a new project on her napkin. She was meeting with a developer next week about a community center in West End. The pay was good, the project exciting, the creative control absolute. Her phone rang as she was paying the bill. Unknown number, but local area code. She answered. "Miss Morrison, this is Dean Patricia Williams, from Georgia Tech's School of Architecture. I hope I'm not calling too late." "Not at all. How can I help you?" "We'd like to invite you to be a guest lecturer for our spring semester. Share your journey. Talk about your work. inspires students who might be considering taking time off or coming back to the field. We think your story would resonate. Nadia thought about 23-year-old her, fresh out of this same program, full of dreams she'd slowly tucked away. Thought about what she would have needed to hear then. Thought about students who might be facing the same choices she'd faced, the same pressures to make themselves smaller for someone else's comfort. I'd be honored, she said. The lecture was scheduled for May. Nadia stood in front of a classroom full of students, some her daughter's age, some older, some returning to school after years away, and told them the truth. I made a choice at 23 to prioritize my husband's career over my own. And for a long time, I told myself it was fine. That I was happy. That being a wife and mother was enough. But here's what I learned. You can be those things and still be yourself. You can support your partner without erasing yourself. And if someone asks you to choose between your dreams and their comfort, choose yourself. Every single time. A young woman in the front row raised her hand. But what if you love them? What if you want to support them? Then support them in ways that don't destroy you. Real love doesn't ask you to disappear. Real partnership means both people get to shine. I spent 15 years making myself smaller, dimmer, less. And the person I did it for still left. Because it was never about me not being enough. It was about him not valuing what I was. After the lecture, students lined up to talk to her, to ask questions, to share their own stories, to thank her for being honest. One woman, probably in her 40s, waited until everyone else had left. I needed to hear this, she said. I've been putting my career on hold for 10 years, telling myself it's temporary. But it's not, is it? It never is unless you make it temporary. What do you want to do? Nadia asked. Sustainable design. I want to create buildings that help the environment instead of hurting it. Then do that. Start now. Not tomorrow, not next year. Now. The woman left with tears in her eyes and determination in her posture. In June, the framing for the East Atlanta project was complete. Nadia walked through the structure with hard hat and clipboard, checking measurements, adjusting plans, watching her vision become reality. Workers called out to her with questions, treating her like the authority she was. Miss Morrison, you want us to adjust this window placement. Miss Morrison, the contractor needs your approval on these materials. Miss Morrison, the clients are here for the walkthrough. She was someone who mattered, whose opinion counted, whose work changed things. That evening, sitting on her porch swing with wine and satisfaction, Nadia's phone rang. Sarah Mitchell. I have news, Sarah said. Derek filed for bankruptcy. Nadia sat up straight. What? The legal fees. The settlement payments. Maintaining his lifestyle while paying you it caught up with him. He's filing Chapter 7. The good news is you're considered a priority creditor for the alimony and child support. So that's protected. But he's claiming he can't afford the current payment structure. Can he do that? He can try. We'll be back in court next month. Judge Hughes won't be sympathetic. He created this situation, but she might adjust the payment schedule to match his reduced income. Nadia should have felt something: satisfaction, vindication, maybe even pity. Instead, she felt nothing. Derek's financial situation was no longer her problem. She was making her own money now, supporting herself and her daughters. Let me know what happens, she said. But Sarah? I don't care anymore. I really don't. That, Sarah said warmly, is how you know you've healed. The bankruptcy hearing in July was brief. Judge Hughes reduced Derek's payments to $4,000 a month total, acknowledging his changed financial circumstances, while making clear it was his own fault. Mr. Morrison, you created this situation through your choices. You hid assets, spent marital funds on an extramarital affair, and fought against a fair settlement at every turn. You're lucky, Mrs. Morrison doesn't need your support to survive, because you're getting a break you don't deserve. Don't come back to my courtroom. Derek looked diminished, smaller somehow. He didn't look at Nadia as he left. In the parking lot, Nadia called her daughters. How do you two feel about getting that dog? Their screams of joy made her laugh until her sides hurt. They adopted a rescue dog the next weekend, a goofy golden retriever mix named Sunny, who immediately claimed the entire couch as his personal domain and made the girls laugh constantly. In August, the Atlanta Architecture Association announced that Nadia had been nominated for a more prestigious award, Architect of the Year, typically given to much more established professionals. She wouldn't win, the competition was fierce, and her career resurrection was too recent, but the nomination itself was validation. Patricia threw her a party. To the prep wife who became the main event. Everyone laughed, including Nadia. The term didn't hurt anymore. It was just words Derek had used to try to make himself feel powerful while his life fell apart around him. In September, Derek requested permission to reduce his visitation schedule. Work commitments, he said. But Amber told Nadia the truth. He moved to a smaller apartment. It only has one bedroom. He says we can visit, but there's nowhere for us to sleep. How do you feel about that? Nadia asked carefully. Amber shrugged, trying to look indifferent and failing. I guess I'm sad, but also kind of relieved. Is that terrible? No, baby, it's honest, and honest is always better than pretending. In October, exactly 1 year after the court battle began, the East Atlanta Community Housing Project was completed. Nadia stood at the dedication ceremony with Patricia and Michael, watching residents move into their new homes. There were families with children, elderly couples, single parents starting over, all of them getting keys to spaces that were beautiful and dignified and affordable. The community center opened its doors to after-school programs and job training and neighborhood meetings. A woman approached Nadia, a young mother with 2 small children. Are you the architect? I am. Thank you. Thank you for making something beautiful for us. Thank you for not treating us like we don't deserve nice things just because we don't have money. The woman hugged her, and Nadia felt tears streaming down her face. This was what mattered. In November, Nadia received an unexpected email. From Jennifer. I don't expect you to read this, but I needed to say it. You were right. About everything. Derek isn't who he pretended to be. He used me the same way he used you as a placeholder until something better came along. He's broke now, bitter, and still blaming you for his choices. I'm sorry for my part in hurting you. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that you were right to leave. Nadia read it twice, then deleted it. Jennifer's apology didn't change anything. Some bridges weren't meant to be rebuilt. December brought snow. Unusual for Atlanta. Nadia and her daughters built a snowman in their yard while Sunny ran circles around them, barking at the falling flakes. Mom, Joy asked, packing snow onto the snowman's middle. Are you happy now? Nadia looked at her house, her daughters, her dog, her life. Thought about the projects lined up for next year. The students she'd inspired. The buildings she'd designed that would outlast her. Yeah, baby. I'm really happy. Happier than before, so much happier. Because this happiness is mine. I built it myself. On New Year's Eve. Nadia's second with her new life. She sat alone on her porch swing after the girls went to bed. She thought about Derek calling her a prep wife. About how those words had nearly destroyed her. Instead, they'd rebuilt her. She pulled out her phone and recorded a video, posting it to her social media for the first time in a year. A year ago, someone told me I was just a prep wife. Just a placeholder until something better came along. He was right, but not the way he thought. I was preparing. Preparing to remember who I was. Preparing to reclaim what I'd given away. Preparing to show him and everyone else what happens when you underestimate a woman who's done settling for less than she deserves. To everyone out there who's been made to feel small, temporary, replaceable, you're not. You're the architect of your own life. And if the building you've been living in doesn't fit anymore, you have permission to tear it down and design something better. That's what a prep wife really looks like. We're not preparing for someone else's future. We're preparing for our own. She ended the recording and posted it without overthinking. Within an hour, it had hundreds of likes and comments. Women sharing their own stories. Thanking her for putting words to their experiences. Promising themselves they'd start building something new. At midnight, when fireworks exploded over Atlanta, Nadia raised a glass to herself. She'd shown Derek what a prep divorce looked like. Now, she was showing everyone what a prep wife could become. And she was just getting started.